And we'll bring in Michael Kaskey-Blomain here on 97.3 ESPN. He will be covering the 76ers for the website and, of course, here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN as we finish up the 76ers season on Wednesday night. Michael, welcome aboard, man. How you doing?
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me on, man. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
We're doing good, and, I want to get into where this all started with you in a moment, but if you can kind of fill the listeners in a little bit on your background and your Sixers coverage and stuff and what they can expect from you covering the Sixers.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been covering the team to an extent since 2009 when I came to Philadelphia. Started covering the Sixers with the ESPN True Hoop Network in 2009 through about 2012. Then I spent a couple years with Philly.com covering the Sixers as a credentialed reporter during the 2013-14 and 14-15 seasons. And now I've kind of just been freelance, and I've done some work for the Sixers since. I have my own Sixers podcast with Jeff McMenamin from Philly Metro called the 76ers Report. And, I'm really excited to just start plugging away here with 97.3.
All right, Michael. So a couple of weeks ago, there was you had a little bit of an insight on the possibility that Sam Hinkie might walk out or be pushed out or fired or something was going to happen with Hinkie. We didn't know a 13-page soliloquy was coming, but what did you know a couple of weeks ago about the possibility that Hinkie would be gone?
Yeah, I had heard some rumblings for almost a couple months, pretty much since January from a couple sources within the organization, within the front office. I'd heard some rumblings, basically that just, support within the front office for Hinkie at this point was kind of split. Some members, the patience was kind of waning on his, quote-unquote process and, the amount of time it was taking and the toll that it was taking on the fan base. So, there was I heard that there was a split kind of within the front office, and there was kind of like a growing sense of, almost like, what do we have to show at this point for, all the struggles that we've gone through over the past almost 3 seasons at this point. So I was kind of, basically told that there was a, growing sense of, maybe insecurity or uncertainty with Hinkie's job going forward. I certainly didn't know that it was, that something was going to happen in such a quick manner. I came out with that initial report, I believe, 2 weeks ago today. And then, within a week and a half, last Wednesday evening, Sam came out with the 13-page letter and stepped down. So, things happened at a much quicker rate, I think, than I initially expected. But it wasn't something that, just came out of nowhere. There was certainly some discontent and some things going on behind the scenes in the front office for, a little while now.
All right, so there's some split in the organization. Hinkie ends up basically resigning. Most people think he might have been forced out here. Do you believe the Sixers when they tell the fans that they wanted Hinkie to remain on board?
I believe that they believe themselves saying that. I mean, I don't really know how they could think that, Sam would be comfortable with yet another marginalization of his power. When they started this process almost 3 years ago, when Sam first came on board, he was obviously given, sole control of the organization. He was the head man in charge. He was supposed to have the full backing of the ownership for, enough time for his plan to see itself through. And then when they added Jerry in December, that was obviously a huge marginalization of Sam's power at that point. I think a lot of the Sixers fan base was kind of naive at that point. Thinking that Sam and Jerry, could coexist and Sam would still be able to do a lot of the things that he had set out to do initially. And then when it came to the point that it was obvious that Jerry wanted to bring someone else in at Sam's level, that someone else, obviously turned out to be his son, Bryan. At that point, it would be really tough to blame, Sam for walking away at this point. So, I mean, the organization could say that, we presented Sam the opportunity. We didn't kick him out in order to save face. But, I highly doubt that, the members of the Sixers front office being, semi-intelligent businessmen and whatnot would really have assumed that Sam would be, basically okay with staying on board and playing third fiddle to Bryan and Bryan Colangelo.
All right, Michael. This is where, to me, it smells pretty bad. I'm sure to sane people it does too. People who don't like the process might think differently or didn't like the process. I guess the process is over to some extent. The fact is, all right, so Hinkie walks out. He resigns. Then they, quote-unquote, looking for someone to replace him, find Bryan Colangelo. Josh Harris, which I find kind of interesting, at 2:30 on the day of the Masters, kind of pops onto a final round coverage of the Masters. He decides to have a press conference to tell people that the guy that they gave a 3-year contract to be an advisor to ownership didn't advise them on who to hire to be the president. Are we supposed to buy that?
No, I don't know how you could. That's almost insulting to the fan base's intelligence at that point. Either way, if he's in the position, the chairman of basketball operations, why wouldn't he be involved in the process? The search for the next GM, it doesn't make any sense that he wouldn't be involved after he was given, this high position of power within the organization. And especially, there were reports surfaced that he was, he wanted Bryan originally to have the position when the Sixers first initially approached him about the job. He kind of deflected their interest to Bryan, but, they wanted him, obviously, because of, his Rolodex, his experience in the league, his connections. So, at that point, he accepted the job. But, I think it's completely almost insulting to the intelligence of the fan base to say that, Jerry Colangelo wasn't involved in the process that, just so happened to end up with his son, who he wanted with the position in the first place, to, land with that position.
So on that, if I were to say to you, the Sixers were having a league-wide search, I'm not saying Bryan Colangelo's a boob. I'm not saying he stinks. I'm not saying his resume doesn't even warrant consideration. Is Bryan Colangelo, if they did a full-fledged search for this job, the best guy they could have found?
I doubt it. It's hard to believe that he is. There's probably a reason that he's been out of the league for, 3 years now since he kind of flamed out with Toronto. With that being said, I'm not trying to be super quick to, judge or crucify Bryan on the process that brought him here. That's not necessarily his fault. There was reports that came out that he didn't even want this position initially for exactly the reason that we're talking about now. He didn't want it, the perception to be that he needed his dad to get him another job, in an NBA front office. The reports were that he was initially interested in the Nets job, and, when that kind of fell through, he, kind of backed his way into the Sixers job. His career to this point has obviously been split. I know there's been, a lot of talk about things he's done in the past. The Bargnani pick, number 1 overall. He's given out some bad contracts. So, there's not necessarily any reason to think that he is the guy that's going to be, the one to build the Sixers up into something legitimate. But at the same time, it's not necessarily fair to, judge him yet until he actually makes some moves. And he's certainly in a great position to be able to make moves due to the groundwork of Sam Hinkie.
So Jerry Colangelo steps down. He's basically out of the picture. Was this some kind of charade? What do you make of the Jerry Colangelo tenure, if you could call it that, in Philadelphia? Was this him basically? I've kind of surmised, Michael, that, this whole process, people thought that, well, the NBA was, mad, so they sent Jerry Colangelo in here. And I've kind of looked at it like people saw what the Sixers were doing, liked it, and said they went through the miserable 3 years. I'll come in there and take over with all these great assets in my lap. So he basically went in there as a guy to kind of endorse what the Sixers were doing as a way to kind of elbow his way into an unbelievable situation.
Yeah, he really struck gold here. There's not many better, obviously it doesn't necessarily seem like that right now, the Sixers, after their struggles for the past 3 seasons, but there's not a whole lot of better situations going forward in the NBA that a GM could sort of just luck into, more so than the Sixers, with the cap space, the draft picks, obviously the assets. Basically, Hinkie's mantra over the past 3 years, he's done exactly what he said, and he's left the team in an excellent position, to capitalize on going forward. The fact that, Jerry Colangelo's tenure, if you can, like you said, if you can even call it that, quote unquote, it really just seems as though it was a big charade to land Bryan a job. The ball's on the guy to announce that he's stepping down from his newly appointed role in the same press conference that his son is announced as the new GM. That really tells you all you need to know, I feel like, right there. He'd never really had a vested interest in running the Sixers, and even in being part of the Sixers. He was doing it via Skype from Phoenix. He wasn't planning on moving here. And the second he got his son this position of power within the organization, he shed his title. That basically tells you all you need to know about his Jerry's legitimate level of interest in the organization.
Yeah, so now it gets us to where we are today, where you wrote over at 973ESPN.com. Michael Kaskey-Blomain is with us here. He's covering the 76ers, and his first piece on the Sixers is up. Colangelo's in control. All right, so that's where we are now. Bryan Colangelo. Jerry basically steps down. Bryan has the job. I've said before, people have asked me, well, did this fail then? And my answer, Michael, has kind of been, Hinkie handed this guy everything. Of all the stuff he has, even if you don't like Bryan Colangelo, you would almost have to be an idiot to mess this up, right? I mean, people don't understand where the Sixers were, where Hinkie has got them, so that no matter who's in charge now, it's going to be pretty hard to screw this up, right?
I mean, you would think so, and you would hope so. Sam mentioned specifically in that, that 13-page manifesto that we were talking about a little earlier that, despite all the work that he's already done, there's still a lot of work left to be done, within the organization in terms of building them back into a winner. Some of the right decisions have to be made. But with that being said, with the way Sam set it up is there's so much security in the organization that one bad move won't necessarily cripple the team going forward. There's no bad contracts now. There's so many draft picks. There's so much cap space that, if they happen to swing and miss on one draft pick or one bad contract, that won't necessarily, doom the franchise because there's so much flexibility elsewhere due to Hinkie's work. So, I mean, I don't want to say that it's impossible to mess up because, crazy things have happened in the NBA, but, it would certainly be, have to take a few, bad decisions basically to kind of undo all the positive things that Sam has done in his 3 years with the organization.
So what should Sixers fans now, how will Hinkie be remembered? What do they think, what should be thought of the Hinkie era?
I mean, it's impossible. Even the detractors of Sam Hinkie can't. It's impossible not to acknowledge the position that he's left the franchise in. Going forward with him no longer there. If you want to harp on some of the negatives during his time with the team, his unwillingness maybe to talk to the media, the fact that he didn't sign a point guard, to help develop some of the guys or veterans, whatnot. There's definitely things that you could nitpick with what Sam did during his time here. But as far as what his stated goal was when he came here in April of 2013 with the, ownership's approval to right now, he's basically did almost as good as a job as you could do setting this team up for success. Unfortunately now we're never going to know one way or another if, Hinkie's plan would have worked 100%. If he was able to be the guy to, capitalize on all his own moves and then the team ended up being poor, it'd be easy to say, okay, well, Sam did a bad job. But at this point, since it's going to be, somebody else making the moves on his groundwork, it's kind of almost going to be like a half grade based on what he does, because there'll always be people that if Jerry does a great job and builds the team into a champion, people will be saying, well, Sam couldn't have done that. We needed Jerry. And then if Jerry fails, it's on the other side that said we should have kept Sam and seen what he could do. So, unfortunately, I think it's always going to be kind of a mixed bag the way you look at Sam in Philadelphia. But, I think the main point is just that, you can't deny how he's at least set the team up for success going forward.
Do you think Sam should have stepped down? Do you support that decision by him? Do you understand it? I think we all understand that his role was going to be minimalized to some extent, but do you look at it and wish that Sam would have been willing to work with the Colangelos?
Selfishly, yeah. I mean, I wish he would have given it a try, at least. The fact that he's not even going to be around this summer, for the 16 draft, which the team has, potentially 4 first-round picks, he set the groundwork for, or all this cap space to potentially sign free agents. I think myself and a lot of the fan base wishes that he would be around, at least to have his voice heard, what he would have done, with some of all this assets that he created for himself. So, in that regard, it would have been nice to have, a third voice kind of not contradicting, but in addition to the 2 Colangelo voices. But, with that being said, as you kind of alluded to, it's understandable why he left at that point if he didn't think his voice would basically just be boxed out between the Colangelos. If he and Bryan disagreed on something and they took it upstairs to Jerry, which way is he going to lean? And, as he laid out in that letter, he just felt that at this point he didn't have enough influence on the organization anymore to do what he thought was the best best for the team. So, he did what he could and packed up, and I really don't think you can hold that against him.
We're talking with Michael Kaskey-Blomain at The Real Mike KB on Twitter. Follow him there for the Sixers, the NFL, the NBA draft. We'll have plenty more with Michael as the offseason is just 2 games away. Tonight against Toronto, tomorrow against Chicago, and then what really Sixer fans, Michael, have been waiting for 3 years. This is probably the biggest offseason, and this was the offseason that was really intended to be the biggest offseason regardless of who was in charge, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing that's almost so interesting about the timeline. Like this summer, a shift was set to take place regardless of who was in control. We have, all these draft picks coming down the pipeline. Dario Saric, hopefully coming over from Turkey. Joel Embiid, hopefully hitting the court healthy. Tons of cap space. I mean, this summer was already being pointed to as the summer where things were potentially going to turn around for the Sixers, before Hinkie stepped down. So that's almost kind of adds a little bit of salt to the wound of him not being here. This summer was going to be big either way. And now, with Jerry and Bryan in place, I think the organization is banking on the fact that that'll, at least help them in the free agency market.
Real quick, Michael, what do you know about Embiid's progress? I mean, do you have an update? Does anybody have an update on where he is? I mean, since Sam is now gone, have they been more forthcoming in the last week or so with where he is?
The forthcomingness hasn't come yet. They guard Embiid's health, like one of the best-kept secrets of the country or something like that. But the last I heard was that he is certainly making progress. He's basically cleared for all activities except for, actual 5-on-5 contact basketball. He's, he's ramped up his workouts. He's putting more pressure on the foot. He's, going a little bit longer. I'm sure, a lot of the listeners have seen him shooting around before the games recently. He looks to be in, phenomenal shape. His, his jump shot and his touch on his shot is, it's phenomenal. All the keys are there. It's a matter of if he can stay healthy and get out on the court. And that's been a qualifier since the day he was drafted with the team. But, at this point, things could obviously change, but it's looking pretty positive for, his health at this point and the chance to be out on the floor next season.
All right. We'll be all over the Sixers all season as well. Michael Kaskey-Blomain. We'll have more at 97.3 ESPN.com at The Real Mike KB. Mike, welcome aboard, pal. We're looking forward to the Sixers offseason. This is the one. This is the one that they better hit on because if not, Bryan Colangelo is going to be in big trouble if they miss.
Yeah, absolutely. He'll have quite a few seasons if the team starts 0-17 again, to say the least.
Oh boy, that would be miserable. All right, Michael. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.